Okay, video 3. Right after I finish browning the top of my chicken, put it in for lower so you guys have 20 minutes before that. This video is going to be about one question because I knew that this one would take forever. This is Sabrina's. She sent this as my very first 300 video I ever even got. And so, I knew that this one was going to take forever. This is basically like Sabrina wants me to meta out loud. That's not actually what she said, but pretty much it's true. And Laura knew it was true from the moment she saw the question. So this question is, what do you think made Steve decide to become a Navy SEAL? One, I do not hold with Len Cobb saying that Steve wanted to be a Navy SEAL from 15. At 15, I can understand this being like a goal, an idea, this really smooth, awesome, happy, cool thing, the way that boys used to feel about war back in the 12th century from writing Marion, where it's all about glory and honor and being the coolest person ever. I don't think at 15 you have any idea what it takes to be a SEAL. I think that he sort of sets it up as his goal, and he sort of plans to do it. I do not think... Well, we need to start with the beginning. From the beginning, that we know from John that Steve wanted to be a cop, and then he was told by his dad not to be a cop, which is problematic enough. He wanted to follow in the footsteps of his hero. His hero said no. We still get the idea that Steve basically wanted to follow in the footsteps of both his grandfather and his father regardless. He was going to go into the Navy, probably do 1 or 2 tours, and then he was going to become a cop. That was just that was the goal. Obviously, everything changes when Steve is 15. He is, booted off to the Army Navy Academy that then feeds straight into the USNA Annapolis, which is the USNA, but and is now stuck in my head as the USNA because of Baby Boys, because I've done so much Annapolis research in the last 3 months that it's insane. I could just start rattling and rambling things off about it. I think that at that point, all Steve has to hold on to is his goals and his ideas about what he wanted to be when he left, because it's all he has left to hold on to at all. Especially as he starts to realize that his dad is not there, and there are probably less phone calls, and he doesn't ever go home for holidays, because we hear that the kids haven't seen each other, in 10 years, and we hear that John doesn't tell him he loves him, and that he wasn't there for Coronado. So you have to assume that from the age of about 15 forward, Steve pretty much loses both of his parents. And so all he has is these things that are in his head, because he has no house, he doesn't have his state, he doesn't have any family, even long distance wise, even though Mary gets their aunt. Steve just gets duty. And so Steve becomes insanely good at duty, and probably much better than he ever assumed he would be, probably much better than he ever would have been if Doris was still alive and he was still living with John and Mary. Probably even if Doris was not alive and he was still living with John and Mary, because he would have things to go back to. He would have things to hold him back. One of the biggest reasons that I think Steve becomes a SEAL, and especially becomes the best SEAL ever, is because he has nothing to hold him back, ever. He has no family behind him. He has 2 long friends, and that's it. And they're not even that long at that point. He's probably only had Catherine for about 4, maybe 3 years at that point. He has probably only had Freddie for maybe 2 years. So these are just slightly good friendships, but they're not eternal things. Steve goes into SEALs with nothing to make him hesitate, nothing to hold him. If he rings the bell, he has nowhere to go. He has no experience with anything else. He has been in the military from the age of 15 forward. This is all he has. And so there is no option. It's not even about, don't go ring the bell. It's that he has no bell. There's no bell to ring because there's no world to go back to. There's no place. There's no job. There's no nothing. There's just the Navy. And figuring out what he's going to do in the Navy. I think he stays a SEAL for so long because of the same reasons. He doesn't have a family to go back to. He doesn't have a house to go back to. He has no reason, and we see the proof that he has not spent any of this amazing money that he gets paid and the extra hazard pay. Like he does nothing with it. I can assume that he probably has an apartment and a car somewhere, but he probably gets rid of those like within years because he never goes home. We hear that he does not go on shore leave. You know, he doesn't take vacations that often, even like in 50. I mean, he lives on Hawaii. He goes. We know that he goes. Sorry, he goes surfing and he sometimes hikes and he likes to run, but he doesn't go anywhere. He's still making mad money. Doesn't do anything with it. You know, aside from buy swanky gifts as his big gestures to people. But like as a Navy SEAL, he had nowhere to go, so he just kept signing up and kept signing up and kept signing up. And I think that's part of why he's in the reserves, whereas Catherine was demoted from the military, basically in a being fired situation, because I cannot ever give anything else to that with that short timeline. But like, you know, he had nothing to hold him back. He had nothing to go home to. He had no normal life. He has no extended friends group or family of choice. Freddie dies. And then he comes home and he has to deal with, you know, the mystery of John. But I think there's something seductive, especially in someone who has no family and is not good enough for the family that's left, that there is this amazing arm of government that sees him as the best ever. I don't think that ever goes skin deep with him. I think he understands that he's the best. I think he understands that, you know, he could probably get anyone into his bed. I don't think these things actually ever penetrate deep enough. I don't think that he will ever stop feeling that he has to continue to be the best just to be good enough. I don't even think that good enough is ever good enough. We constantly see him strive to be the very best ever. And he doesn't want any recognition for it because that's very SEAL too. God, I don't know. I'm rambling everywhere. This is why you guys get it written down, because then I can like edit things out and talk about them in order. And I think Steve chose it because it chose him and because that was all he had left and because he had no life behind him. And he was the best. And, you know, it's also on the path of his only last vaguely living family member, which was Joe, which I think was important, even though there would have been no familial ties during that time, and Joe probably would have treated him like crap more than he had to treat the other people like crap, because he had to prove he had no favoritism until Steve graduated, which at that point, of course, favoritism. But, you know, before that, I mean, because we see that Joe at the beginning of season 2 is at least this really awesome, you know, family slash trainer person. But yeah, I think he stays in because he is the best, and he stays in because he has nowhere else to go, and he stays in because of both of those, he doesn't turn down like the worst jobs, because he will go and go and go and go and go like the Energizer Bunny until he dies. And I assume that before 5-0, Steve did not really plan for retirement ever. I think he planned to stay in the field until it killed him, doing the best he could, saving as many people as he could, taking out as much, you know, fucked up crazy darkness, no matter what face it had, until it killed him. And he can consider his life, you know, a good cause because of it. I think his life gets complicated when it has to be more than that, when it's no longer simply the arrow going in one direction, doing the best, being the best, doing the best by the world, and then suddenly there are these people and they're under his skin and they are an actual team and they're an actual family. And I think it changes entirely who he is. I talked to Laura about this. When he's on duty, because he's still reserves, but he would still be called up quite often because I don't believe he'd make all of his monthlies. So I think he'd be in the 2 week makeups, and I think he'd have missions he's called up for because of it, and because he's still the best. Because we're not told that he's not the best. Um, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. That's crappy.